Good morning. We are very excited to have all of you, and we're honored to have this distinguished group of panelists. They are specialists in all things Fiona the Hippo. How she came into the world, how her life was saved, and why it is a story that has captured the hearts of millions of people of all ages around the world, and particularly in Findlay, Ohio. Tammy Ware, raise your hand, Tammy, serves as interpretive education keeper at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. She has a degree in exotic animal training and management from Moore Park College and has been at the Cincinnati Zoo for over 3 years, where she has worked as a zookeeper training a range of animals, including hippos, lions, manatees, giraffes, and sea lions, as well as small reptiles and birds. Blake Gustafson, Blake, has her RN and Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and has worked at Cincinnati Children's Hospital for 34 years. She's been part of the vascular access team for the past 25. Blake currently works on the infant and toddler floor, treating patients with a variety of diagnoses. Richard Cowdery is a nationally known book illustrator whose works include illustrating the New York Times #1 bestseller, Bad Dog Marley, as well as serving as an illustrator for many distinguished clients, including the National Football League, Ducks Unlimited, Wendy's International, the list goes on. He recently, as we've just mentioned, wrote and illustrated Fiona the Hippo, which rose to #1 for pre-sale orders through Amazon. So we are in good company this morning. We'll first watch a brief video regarding the birth and early life of Fiona, followed by each of our panelists sharing a brief summary of his or her role in the life of Fiona. Then we'll have some questions, and I promise to let you ask your questions first, because you know that I would take all the time. But I have some great questions if you don't come through. All right, so please turn your attention to the screen.
We saw signs starting at 10 a.m. on January 23rd, and she did not get out of that water for 12 hours, and she stayed in there doing the same thing. The keeper stayed till late that evening, and then I took over watching on the cameras overnight from home, and at about 3 in the morning, she was on land, which is another, blessing that allowed for Fiona to be here. And she stood up, and out came Fiona, and she was alive, which was really surprising, and BB seemed fine, and that was the last thing we saw before we rushed in to help in person. So she was looking a lot like a very tiny but normal hippo, developing the way we would like to see, and then she started teething.
And then she was in so much pain, we believe she stopped wanting to nurse, and then, of course, she's not getting nutrients and became dehydrated.
Her mouth hurt, she didn't want to eat at all, so even with tube feeding, she became much more lethargic. Her blood work was showing sometimes a little bit of signs that were a little bit concerning. Nothing that showed infection or anything horrible, but she just, we knew we needed some extra help, basically, at that point. She wasn't clicking along like she had been in the days prior to that, and we needed to get a little bit more aggressive with our therapy.
Because she was so dehydrated, her veins were even harder to find. So eventually, they would find a vein and get a catheter in to keep the IV drip in, and either she would move or it was just too weak of a vein for the catheter to work. The catheter would break and we couldn't keep an IV in her.
She dehydrated so quickly, and then it was just racing against the clock to try and get fluids into her.
So we were trying everything we knew to keep her hydrated, and just really nothing was working, and she was declining quickly.
We knew we needed a long-term IV catheter. That is what she needed to save her life at that point.
One of the staff here at on the PR team actually had her own experience with the vascular access unit. So the Cincinnati Children's Hospital came, and they had all the special equipment and are used to working with all of the premature NICU babies.
That's something that our vascular access team does every day, 24/7, placing vascular access devices. It might be an IV or a PIC, or managing complications on all different size patients.
We had packed up a big bag of different supplies that we thought would work well for an animal, just trying to keep this in. And we came down and did our thing.
They use ultrasound to find the veins that are deeper in the body.
And not knowing, is it thick-skinned, or do we have any hair? Are we going to be able to even visualize a vein?
And so they came over very graciously, really within about an hour of calling them, they were here. And they used the ultrasound and found some deep veins in her leg and were able to place a more permanent catheter for us.
One of the challenges was, after placing it, is really securing it. So what are we going to do next? So we brought a lot of different products over to actually secure it and then tape it really well also.
Thank God they came when they did, because I was going on my weekend when this all happened, and I was literally saying my goodbyes.
And then to see her decline like that so sharply, and I mean, we really didn't know from moment to moment if she was going to stay with us. Once they had it set up, it lasted for 4 days, and she just perked right back up after 4 days. But that was the scariest time.
I think without their help, we would not have Fiona today. So I do believe Children's Hospital, there's so many other things that went into Fiona, and there are so many things that could have gone wrong if our vet staff or nursery care staff hadn't done what they had done. But one of the points in Fiona's life where she would not have survived was when she was no longer taking her bottle and we could not keep an IV in her. So I do believe that the Children's Hospital staff is responsible for saving her life at least one of the many times that she needed it.
So we were so pleased to be really a part of the Cincinnati Zoo's history for baby Fiona.
It's a good feeling to be able to help our zoo in Cincinnati, because I think she's just brought such joy to everybody in Cincinnati. Everybody loves her.
It worked out and succeeded, and then after that, she was just on the path to become a normal little hippo.
So I will ask each of our panelists to give his or her perspective on this great experience, and then, as I said, we'll open it up for questions. The University of Findlay teaches our students that more can happen if you collaborate and work together across disciplines, and I think this story will exemplify just that very, very well. So why don't we start with you, Blake, and we'll come this way, and you can sit right there.
So this is on. Okay, there you go. I'm Blake Gustafson. I work at Cincinnati Children's in the vascular access team, and we place IVs, midlines, which is what we placed in Fiona, which is a little bit longer than an IV, about anywhere from 3 to 7 inches, and PICC lines, which are a central line that's close to your heart. So we place these in patients from newborn up to adults. And on February 16th, our team had gotten a call from the zoo saying that they might need us to help with baby Fiona. And I was not at work that day. I guess the whole department went crazy. They were running around. Everybody in Cincinnati knew of Fiona. She was an inspiration. They were all pulling for her. And they ran around and got all the supplies together and were really excited. Well, gotten another IV in her and said, let's wait and see how she does overnight. And I got to work on the 17th, and everybody was like, oh, I get to go to the zoo. I get to go put this IV in. And they were all like, oh, it was going really crazy. So after lunch, my boss comes in, and she's like, Blake, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, no, what did I do? I wasn't even here yesterday. And she said, come to the office. So I go in with Darcy, who is in those pictures, and they're like, you're going to the zoo. Fiona's in bad shape. She's really dehydrated. She was teething, and they need you to put a midline in. I'm like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? I mean, is her skin going to be thick? Are we going to be able to see a vein on ultrasound? And what if we can't do it? What's going to happen to Fiona? So we called security and said, can you take us to the zoo? And they're like, well, we don't normally do that. And Darcy said, well, we don't normally put an IV in a baby hippo either. So they said, yes, they'd take us. And we got there and met Tammy. And the first thing she said was, you have to wash your feet in this special solution. And I'm like, where can I wash my hands? Because we're used to being so sterile. We're really worried about infection. And we walk in, and I'm like, where are we going to do this, you know? So I sat on the floor. I know we have pictures up here. Sat on the floor and set up my sterile field, which was a little hard to keep sterile, but I was asking the girls holding her, don't you guys want to put on gloves? And they weren't really concerned about that. So they wanted us to put the midline behind her head so she could still get in the water and be wet, because that's important. And I just couldn't see anything with the ultrasound machine. So the vet said, usually there's a big vein in the leg, and sure enough, there was a big, huge vein. Was a little worried about our needle, but it was fine. Her skin was not thick at that time. It was kind of like a avocado. Got the midline in, and I cut it a little longer so that when she bent her leg, it kind of didn't work as well, but we kind of made it so it would go straight and thought it would work. Left, pulled into Children's, and immediately they called and said, it's not working. So turned around and went back, got the other leg, cut it a little shorter, and it worked fine. We did suture it in, and then we put some special stuff that we put on kids that sweat a lot to make sure that the dressing would stay on. And it lasted for 6 days. She was able to get all the fluids she needed to survive. And I really think without this collaboration, which came about because Amy, one of the marketing people from the zoo's daughter, had been at Children's and had utilized our team. And without that collaboration, I don't know that she would have survived. So it was a great experience. You know, couldn't have asked for a better thing. Fiona's been such a wonderful thing in our city.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. So I'm Tammy. At the time, I was one of the zookeepers and caretakers for Fiona when all of this went down. And so I got to be there from day one, from the time that she was born, and I got to be there through all the good days and all of the bad days. And up until the point that Children's came, there was a lot of days where you came in not knowing if you were going to walk into the building and they were going to be like, oh, she's doing great, or if you were going to walk in and they'd be like, oh, she didn't make it. So it was a really, really bumpy roller coaster ride the whole time. And I firmly believe with Blake, what she said was that if we hadn't been able to get involved with Children's Hospital, Fiona would not be here today. So we're very, very happy that she is. But I'll tell you, like, the whole experience was like super crazy. Like, I never thought I'd work with hippos in the first place, much less working with one of the hippos that was a preemie. We were the first ones to ever hand raise a hippo, if you guys don't know that. There's no recorded history of anybody ever hand raising a hippo, especially one that was so young. But Jenna had mentioned in our video about her teething, and that's why she quit eating. And so I've been like, it's kind of funny. I'm not like that front zookeeper that everybody sees. I'm not in all the videos or anything like that, but I was kind of like the one in the background doing whatever needed to be done. And the day that they were like, okay, she's teething, why is she not eating? What are we going to do? My curator came to me. She was the first one that was talking in those videos, and she was like, I need you to go to the drugstore, and I need you to get the strongest teething gel for babies that you can get. So I do not have kids. I've never raised a child, so I don't really know much about teething gel. So I went into Walgreens, and I stood staring at all the boxes and realized I was way out of my element and didn't know what I was looking for. So I went to the pharmacy help area, and I stood there, and I was trying to be very, very quiet and very, very discreet. And I was asking them, I was like, so I need the strongest baby gel that I can get, or teething gel that you can get for babies. And she was like, well, how big is your baby? And I was like, so I'm like, 30 pounds? So they just kind of had this look on their face, and she kind of could tell I didn't really know what I was looking for. And she finally looked at my uniform, and she's like, is this for a zoo baby? And I was like, yes. And I'm still trying to be really quiet and discreet. And she was like, okay. And she's like, well, what kind of animal is it? And I was like, well, and she was like, is it for the hippo? And she's trying not, like, there's all these customers around at this point, and they're all just kind of staring at us. So she went over, she helped me find the strongest one I could get, and I took it back, and we tried to use it. We tried to do everything that we could, thinking that she was just way ahead of development, wanting to teeth, and that's the reason that she had quit quit eating. So we were doing like the frozen teething gels, we were doing frozen washcloths, we were doing anything we could, and it still didn't help. So after a few days, they tried several things, and they still couldn't get her to get an IV in or anything, to get those fluids, to get that nutrition, to get anything that she needed. So that is why Amy LaBarbera came up, and she was like, I really do think that we can call them and they'll help. And it's not really the first time that Children's Hospital has helped with Fiona, which most people don't know. I was actually telling Blake this story last night. After Fiona was first born, we were trying to get milk from her. We were milking the mom, and we weren't able to get enough just by using our own hands. So they were like, well, why don't you guys use one of our breast pumps that we use for our moms? So they brought it over, and it was this bright yellow breast pump on a very tall metal pole. And so we're like, okay, we're going to get BB in the stall that we normally do all of our ultrasound training. We're going to put it next to her. We're going to see what she does. And she immediately just like pushed her body as far away as possible. She just kept staring at the machine, and she wouldn't work. So we're like, well, this is not going to work. But I am so happy that we have a collaboration with Children's Hospital, and I'm so happy that they came in, because I, again, firmly believe that we would not have baby Fiona today if it were not for Blake and Darcy.
And without baby Fiona, there's no book. So, I'm Richard Caldry, and I'm originally from Cincinnati, which is a big part of the story for me. My wife and a lot of our family were watching the whole saga unfold on the internet. So I was receiving a daily update as to how Fiona was doing. And and it occurred to me, this was not a real stroke of genius, but that she makes a wonderful character. And when I finally got to speak to the people at the zoo who knew her best, they confirmed that and added to it that she really does connect with you, and she's had a lot of adventures for her young life. I guess she's been deputized, is that right?
Yep. We have a day in Cincinnati that is dedicated to Fiona.
All right. And doesn't she have like an honorary nurses something? And so she's already has all of these adventures that, as an illustrator, as an author, I couldn't ask for a better character. And I'm kind of jumping around here. I was the illustrator of the Marley series, so that was that was also a real story, nonfiction story. Marley was a real dog, and so I had the experience of taking a real character and translating that into a book. So that helped as well to envision Fiona going from real hippo to character hippo. And so in this book, the first, and I say the first book because there will be at least 3. We stayed pretty close. The publisher wanted to stay pretty close to her real story because it's very compelling, and as you've heard already, we didn't need to really play it up at all. So the beginning of the book pretty much deals with her being premature and the other zoo animals wanting to play with her. Oh, they're behind me. Well, there you go. Okay. Well, this in particular, I thought it was, in this day and age, everybody's got their smartphone or, some device, and I just thought it was really cool that you guys had the vision to record this from the very start. I thought I needed to refer to that in the story because her popularity is part of, we're all here today because we all know of Fiona, and that's because the people at the zoo, put that out there, and everybody became emotionally involved with her, and so I wanted to refer to that in the story, and you can. Okay, so here, and there is a little bit of imagination here. I don't think the animals, but I'm sure the other animals are aware that something is going on at the zoo, and so they long for the day that they can play with Fiona. like the humans get to. I need to know more about this, but I guess she likes bubbles, and that was maybe part of just getting her to move around or whatever. So, bubbles and a hippo. It was an easy page to illustrate. And this again is a reference to her popularity. I think to this day she's still receiving a lot of fan mail, and I was told that they still have people coming from all over the world. Australia, when we were there were people from Australia, Japan, Korea, and a couple other, Canada. So I met a lot of people on the day that I was there who have come just to see Fiona. And that's amazing when you think about it. And so she was kept, I'm sure, for the obvious reasons, she was kept apart from Bibi and Henry. But eventually she had to be reintroduced to her parents, which had to be a very nervous time, I would assume, because Bibi's 3,000 pounds or so. Yep. So just one bad roll and that could be the end of Fiona. So, so I imagined putting myself in Fiona's little mind that she was, waiting to meet her parents and excited for that day. So that there's a good part of the story that, where she's introduced to Bibi, and she swims in her mouth and cleans her teeth, and then she plays with Henry by biting him on the butt, which is, the kids at the school love that. Oh, okay, y'all ready? And so this is towards the end of the story. Again, there's a little bit of imagination here, but Fiona, after all sucking the life out of the zoo and getting all the attention, she decides to have a pool party for all the zoo friends. So I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Yep. All right, let's give a round of applause. And I'm going to let you ask some questions first. So raise your hand quickly if you want to turn. Yes, Cheryl. And there are microphones. That's a deterrent to some, but not to Cheryl.
This is a nursey question, because I'm a nurse. What kind of fluids did you run? And what kind of antiseptic did you use? What were the similarities between your kids? And I'm assuming the vets helped calculate the fluid load.
When we went in, we just put the line in. So we put the line in, we used lidocaine to numb her when we sutured it, and then we left the fluids to the vets. Do you know what they ran?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
There were so many things going on, giving her so many different types of fluids and electrolytes.
Yeah, so we just kind of consulted, gave them the line, they hooked it up, and we were out.
Thanks. I see a hand. We have microphones walking around.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if it's because of Richard's book or the videos, but Fiona looks like she has a great deal of charisma and character. Did that come from her interaction with you, or is she just a natural personality?
We like to call her sassy. She's very, very sassy, and I think it does have to do with the fact that she took on some of our personalities as well as her parents. She's got the best of both worlds. She got hand raised by humans, so she has a very, very close connection to us as humans, but then she got to go and be a hippo with her parents. So for the longest time, we would put them together during the day once we finally started introducing them, but then she still stayed by herself at night, and then we could still go in and share space with her that way. But she definitely has a very big personality, and I think she feeds on the crowds whenever they're there visiting her. And I was telling this story last night at dinner. Whenever we would put her outside for the first time, we never really announced to the public that we were doing this. We would just close off Hippo Cove, and then we would put her out so she could get used to the exhibit, and then we slowly took away those barriers so that if people happened to be there at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they were going to get a surprise. They didn't know that she was going to be out there. Well, word spread very, very quickly across the media, and we would have hundreds and hundreds of people standing down at the glass at 4 o'clock waiting. And so we'd be in the back, we'd open the doors open, and Fiona would run on exhibit, and as soon as the crowd could see her, it was like a rock concert. Everybody would just start screaming and cheering and crying and everything, so it was a very cool experience.
Can Fiona hear well? Did she hear the cheers?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's why she
Respond?
Yeah, and I think that's why she plays up to it to this day, because she would respond and she would kind of get in the water and do like her head tosses and barrel rolls and everything else. And if you ever go, a lot of times she will be sleeping because hippos sleep during the day, but she does tend to sleep right up in the front little window glass where everybody can come and see her, and she sleeps and she takes selfies with them and stuff. So.
All right, another question.
How did Fiona get her name?
So there's a lot of different ways that animals at the zoo gets their names, but whether we let the public name them or whatever. But since we really didn't know what was going to happen with her, they actually let us as keepers decide on her name. So we all got to put a name into the hat, and then they narrowed it down to 3 names. And between those 3 names, then we all voted on which one we liked the best. And so we went with Fiona because it means little hope in Swahili, and also because she does have those Shrek-like ears.
So, is Fiona, is she out now, or does she come out?
Yeah, she is out every single day, as well as temperatures allow. As long as it's above 50 degrees, she's outside because our outdoor pool is heated. But she and her mom go outside every single day together now. So she's in the clear. We're not worried about any side effects now that since she was a preemie, she's completely normal hippo and is at the weight and attitude that she should be at this age.
I was just curious, with Henry's passing, would they be able to bring another male in? Would they interact?
Yeah, so they're not going to do anything until she's at least 5 years old, so they're not really talking about it right now. But, we are very sad that Henry passed, but it does mean that we would be able to bring in another male down the road that both of them could potentially breed with. But they wouldn't do anything until she's at least 5, so that's about the beginning of breeding age for hippos.
Hi, I have 2 questions. One is, when you were showing the photo of her just after birth, I believe you just put the line in. She had on her nails. Were those from birth? Before they shred that, or was that something on her nails?
So when hippos are born, as well as a lot of hoofstock animals that have harder feet, they're actually born in this gelatinous material. And so when she first came out, we all had never seen a baby hippo, so we were all very freaked out. We thought she had these weird alien feet and that there was something wrong. But it's just the keratin is really, really soft. And then as she aged, it started hardening, and then it would kind of shape itself. So whenever she started walking and moving around, it became its shape. But yeah, it looks very weird. It looks very extraterrestrial, but it's just the very, very soft keratin like we have for our fingernails. So that was normal.
And my second question is, how did it go with the introduction back to her parents? Were there any issues that you had to monitor between the 3?
So we did very long introductions between Fiona and BB. That was the one that we were most concerned about because Henry had been around a lot of babies. BB had been around other hippos' babies, but she'd never raised one herself. So it seemed like it took a long period of time for us to introduce them, but we were doing it very gradually. We would let them be in spaces next to each other where they could kind of get nose to nose but not share actual space. And then we would do just little openings so she could kind of stick her head through, but BB couldn't stick her head back through, things like that. And then the very first day that we did introductions on them, we had cameras set up so that we could watch, and there was 5 of us in different areas so that we could be ready in case anything went wrong. And we gave what we call little areas that Fiona could run away, but BB couldn't fit through. So if she ever felt scared or intimidated or like she was going to be in trouble, she could get out if she wanted to. But it was really funny. So they were doing pretty well. BB kind of was interested in her. She would sniff her a little bit. Fiona was more interested in BB. She would run around. But there was one point where BB kind of was like, "You're too much for me right now." And she kind of gave her this side eye and she started to swing her head. And I am not kidding. We all died laughing, but we were also holding our breath at the same time. Fiona had run out of the stall, and then she started to come back into the stall, and she got about 3/4 of the way in. And again, the opening is just wide enough for her to go through. And BB like went to go swing her head, and Fiona just like slowly took backward steps all the way out. And it was like, I've never seen a hippo move backwards, but it was like, we realized at that moment that she could actually read her parents' behaviors. So she could tell when she was pushing them too much. We could tell that she knew that she was a hippo and she knew what her boundaries were. So we got a little bit more confident with that. And then we did more introductions with her and BB. We did all of this inside first because we didn't want anything to go wrong on exhibit and us not be able to get back to her. But at least inside we can open and close doors and things like that. And then when we finally decided to introduce her to Henry, Henry was very, very ambivalent. He didn't care that she was there at all. So we decided to just go ahead and put all three of them on exhibit at the exact same time instead of doing her and BB first and then adding Henry, which became really good because if you watch those videos, there's actually videos of it, you can tell that BB at this point had become pretty protective of Fiona and was kind of like her big sister because, again, BB didn't know that she was her mom. But when Henry started getting a little bit too playful and a little bit too close, BB put Henry in his place. So it worked out really, really well for us.
Has BB's, this you're kind of alluded to it, but I was curious, has BB's behavior changed toward you, her caregivers, since she had Fiona?
No, so BB was always really good with people. She trained really well with people. We could do pretty much anything to her. So like we trained her for ultrasounds, which is why she let us try to milk her and everything. So she was very bonded to us more because we were a source of food, not necessarily because we were a person, as to where Fiona's bonded to us because we're people and she interacted with us. But BB never, she didn't really change towards us, which was kind of nice. She was still very willing to work and very willing to do anything that we asked her to do. So it was very nice.
Hello, thank you all for being here today. I do have a question about with the hippos, other than Fiona getting to see all of her adoring fans, what other types of enrichment do you guys use at the zoo for your hippos?
That's a really good question. So we actually do a lot of hanging feeders. The bubbles were actually a form of enrichment for Fiona. When she was really little, we obviously had different pools. You can see the floats in some of these pictures. We gave her floats. We gave her chew toys to play with. We had all kind of toys. We would do sprinklers. So she could like have the water and off, and she would like either run through it or she ended up just biting it and killing it. But one of her favorite things, we also had like this big purple ball that was donated to us, and it was supposed to be a animal therapy ball. Don't really know, but she loved it. It had all these little spikies on it, and she would push it around, and she would like try to mouth it, but it was way too big for her to mouth because it was bigger than she was. But she loved to push it around and everything. So a lot of balls, a lot of things like that. Now that she's bigger, and especially that she's with BB, all that we have for enrichment is we give them cardboard boxes because for whatever reason, Fiona has always loved going through cardboard boxes. But we also do these really large, heavy plastic toys because with being a 3,000-pound hippo, they're very destructive. So we have to give them things that are destructive. But we do have like balls and cubes and logs and stuff like that that are very thick plastic. We also hang food from the ceiling in different like feeders so they can pull out the leaves and the browse and everything from it, so to kind of keep them occupied.
Did you guys ever figure out why Fiona was born so prematurely? Was it because BB had never had a baby before, or was there other complications?
No, there was no complications, so we really don't know what happened. We we stem it to like, just like with humans, just every now and then you have a baby that's born premature and you don't know why. And everybody has said that BB is fully capable of having another baby. We found her in labor Monday afternoon. We were coming back from lunch and BB was doing rolls in the water and we could see that she started to have some of her placenta coming out. So we knew at that point that she was in labor, but we just didn't know why. We tried to test all of our water levels. We tried to test everything that we had, but there was nothing that had any weird levels that would have caused her to have gone into early labor.
So I have a question. Yes. So Richard, did you have competition for this story? Or other people who disagree with your depiction of Hippo because she belongs to all of us?
Well, there are a few Fiona books out there, some being more scientific, like the one Thane, what is Thane's last name?
Maynard.
Maynard.
Mm-hmm.
What is his position?
Oh, he's director of the zoo.
Okay, so the director of the zoo put out a book before our Fiona book, and it's photographic and a lot more scientific, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives, for people who want that type of information, our book is definitely not scientific in any way. So it's a very good book. But as far as competition, not that I'm aware of, but well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there have been other people who somewhat independently have done books, which, I don't know to what level the zoo has made an attempt to protect her copyright, but that's something that they may want to consider because she is world-renowned at this point. So,
And since the book is soon going to be at the Mazza, it'll be Yours Will Win. Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. You really don't have any competition. That was the right answer.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions over here?
Question for Richard. In the writing of the book, do the figures come before the story, before the text, or is the text that story? And then a follow-up. It sounds like there's a lot of material here. Is it a challenge to decide what makes the final cut, so to speak?
Good questions. Yeah, the book, the second part first. Yeah, it is hard to, the dividing line between nonfiction and fiction, to what degree to keep her Fiona is something that we talk about a lot, the publisher and I. I guess I can say the second book is a Christmas book, so there hasn't been a lot of, that type of thing. She's lived through one Christmas, and to my knowledge, there aren't a lot of little anecdotal Christmas ideas. So that book, I haven't really, thought to use some of the props, but that's always there because, again, she has had so many adventures and is such a character. What was the first part of the?
Pictures first or
Oh,
words
pictures
first?
first. With every book I have ever done and every book I've ever heard of, the manuscript comes first. The story comes first. With Fiona, this has been the most unusual book. When I approached the zoo to do this, they loved the idea. I spoke with Chad Yelton, and he's the director of marketing. And he loved the idea. And so the story, I started sketching it out before there was a story, before the manuscript. I just had her, I tried to show different emotions. In fact, I think I have that in my later presentation. I have some of those sketches. So we were doing character sketches, and it's really interesting that you would ask that. The story kind of wrote itself between the reality of her premature birth and all the attention, as you saw some of the pieces that were up here. Those were just, I was just reflecting her real story. And So at the end of the book where we have the pool party, that's kind of, that's taking a little bit of liberty. But the story really had written itself. I had the whole thing sketched out before the words were done. And that is very unusual. I've never heard that before. And the whole book, I've never seen a book go as well as this. We wanted to get it out quickly, thinking that Fiona's fame would start to wane, but it really hasn't. She continues to be very popular, but we wanted to get the book out quickly. So I think we set a record for from start to finish to on the market. But my point, I guess, was that everything went very well. There were no speed bumps at all, and I've never had something go as smoothly as this, and everybody, and this is not a pitch for the book, but even Ben Sapp here at Findlay said something to me, Richard, you have no idea where this book is going to take you. And I'm still trying to figure out what that means. But it's getting a response from people that I've never seen in a book. And so we're excited about it. Yeah.
Thanks. This is primarily for Blake and Tammy. I'm curious, I know nothing about the internal organs of a hippo and all, but I'm curious from an intersection of human health care and animal care. Blake, when you learned that next day and they said, well, you need to come and put this in, working across those two institutions, and I'm also wondering, we have the Toledo Zoo head vet right here too. I would think that it just was probably an unusual conversation to have with an animal vet, with human care, and getting permission, and was there any time when vets saw it differently than the human folks, and how did you navigate all of that, I guess is my question, between zoo and hospital?
I know when we were called, they had to check with the chief nursing officer to see if it was okay if we went. And that she was like, that is fine. Because Children's has done other stuff with other animals, different departments. I think with the gorillas, we've done some stuff. And so we have had a relationship. As far as like the venous structure, I mean, I went with what the vet said. Normally in an adult or a baby, we have a vein in the leg. So when she said that's normally where one is, that's where we found it. So I think that, pretty similar adults, animals probably have the same kind of vein structure. But no, we didn't have to we didn't have to go see legal or anything that I know of.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I know. That may be the next story.
Accomplishing something without legal.
Yeah.
All right, other questions?
I was just curious if Fiona still recognizes the care team, and like if other people are around, she can figure out who took care of her those initial days where you all spent so much time with her.
I can completely answer that as a yes. I don't get to see her every day anymore. So whenever I do go over, as soon as she hears my voice, she'll come running over and she does like a greeting. So when she was really little, before she started grunting, she would do this noise. It was like, so we would do that back to her. And she would do it through her nose. I can't do that through my nose. But now whenever she does it, she comes running over. She's got her head little tossing and everything. And she actually grunts at us when she sees me. So it makes me really happy to know that she still recognizes who I am.
Hippos have the reputation, or I've heard that they're the most dangerous animal in the world. And so what is the danger that they may roll over on you, or what is exactly that? all about?
Their size is definitely one of those. Their heads are so heavy, and that's one of the first things they'll do is they kind of do this like head whipping thing, and they to try to take things out. But it's actually their mouths and their tusks because they can open their mouths about almost 270 degrees, so not quite vertical, but yeah, so they can open their mouths really wide, and they've got these long, long tusks that are super sharp. So we actually work on behaviors, training behaviors so that we can file them down, so they're not quite so long, not quite so sharp, more so that they're not accidentally injuring the other hippos. But yeah, it's the mouth and those teeth that is the biggest danger, and then them hitting you with their heads. If you saw any of the pictures, Fiona literally could fit in her mom and dad's mouth. So we were very nervous when she first started exploring the inside of their mouths because we're like one little chomp and she could have been headless. So. So she's pretty much on the same diet as her mom is now. So they get lettuce, they get apples, and then whenever we get special fruits in, we'll get a little bit of that. But she mainly gets a lot of hay. They eat a lot of hay. Because in the wild, they would be browsing on grass all night. So we're giving them the closest thing that we can. So she gets hay, and she also gets a grain that's made for hippos and other herbivores, as well as one of her favorite things is we get dried beet pulp, and we rehydrate it and give it to them. So it's just like this little ground up husks almost. And it's got a really nice flavor that they really enjoy. But other than that, just some produce. They really don't eat as much as you would think they do with them being so big. They only eat like 5% of their body weight.
All curiosity settled? A couple of, just to conclude. So if you had it to do again, any of the three of you, your part in this adventure, it obviously ended very successfully and continues to be successful. You still see Fiona? Do you still visit Fiona Blake?
Yep, been to the zoo.
Yeah, she's sort of your personal friend.
Yeah.
For all of you. So is there anything any of the three of you would do differently? Was there a point at which you, upon reflection, you might have done something differently? It sounds as if it went beautifully and you hadn't done it before. So was that just instinct and training, or would you do something a little bit differently?
I mean, I think for us, that first attempt where we cut the line a little too long, left it long, would we have, in hindsight, probably done a little shorter? Yes. But other than that, I think it all went very smoothly.
But how could you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so since we've never done it, but.
Related to that, is there a protocol then developed now that somebody who has the same experience or is going to know because of what you guys did?
No, I mean, when we do it in babies, definitely, depending on the different type of lines you put in. I mean, the midline, which we used in Fiona, we wouldn't put into the bend of an arm. So we kind of should have taken that into account. But no, we haven't developed a protocol.
So no Hippo NICU unit?
No.
I think there's a business there.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything from you?
Not a whole lot. I think if I had it over to do over again, I probably would have been a little bit more. I'm not a very forward person. I'm not a very dominant person. But I think I would have tried to be there more than I was. Only because, there were so many of us taking care of her, and I was always the quiet, shy one that never said, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. I think if I had it over, I would do it again. But I enjoyed every single moment that I had, all the ups and the downs and everything, and I wouldn't change anything.
Well, we're glad it ended successfully. So let's have a round of applause. Marcia, do you have anything more? November 2nd, same building. You don't want to miss it. You never know what might happen. Thank you. Have a great day.